Good morning, all of you. I welcome you all to Ansarkari. So, in this video, we'll be taking up the important articles from the newspaper of 18th of February 2023. So, let's start with today's analysis. So, we are going to discuss about pendulum trafficking, and then Supreme Court basically directs the trial court to record. So this is not important for us. Then we'll be looking into Chief Justice of India to take a call on petitions over Article 370. So basically, this is regarding the Ladakh issue that is going on. And so yeah, let's start with this thing. So Supreme Court says no to sealed cover suggestions in the Adani case. Basically, government wanted to basically provide the suggestions or the information that was asked by the Supreme Court in a sealed cover, but Supreme Court has denied that, and court is going to set up a committee to examine the Hindenburg research report on the Adani group. So a committee would be formed to investigate and to look into the report which was released by the Hindenburg research, and it accepted the government suggestions that will affect the credibility of the panel. And apart from that, so what is basically short selling? I have discussed this thing, what that like the important details regarding this, but again we'll take it up today. So Chief Justice of India, on Friday he happened to quiz the petitioner on what exactly he knew about short selling, and a SEBI note in the court, it gives a brief explanation on the phenomenon that has come under the spotlight with the Adani Hindenburg case. So basically, when one simple thing is that you can buy the shares for a longer time period with the expectations that the prices are going to increase in future. So that is, we can say, that is taking a long position. But when we talk about short selling, so here you have to first sell your shares with the expectation that the prices are going to fall in future. So if the prices would be falling and you have sold the shares, so when the prices they fall and you're going to that meets your target level, then you go ahead and buy those shares. So only then you're going to earn the profits in case of short selling. So that is, in simple terms, what do we mean by short selling? And let's just go through it once, what has been mentioned over here in the case of what is the method of short selling. So the investors, they borrow the shares and then they sell. So they have to borrow the shares from the brokers and expecting to buy them back later at a lower price before returning them to the lenders and making profits on the difference between the higher sale price initially and the lower purchase price subsequently. So this is what I have explained to you in simple terms, that what do we mean by short selling. And except this, I don't think so anything important is there for us in this article. Then so IT department says that there have they have found irregularities during the survey that was being conducted at the BBC. And we also discussed about the difference between a survey and a raid. So the multiple irregularities that have been found out are regarding the non-payment of tax on certain remittances that were not disclosed as income in the India. And the survey was basically carried out under Section 133A of the Income Tax Act. And then the agency, it revealed that despite substantial consumption of content in various Indian languages, apart from English, the incomes or the profits which are shown by the various group entities, they were not commensurate with the scale of the operations in India. So some basically irregularities have been found out. And so Sena's symbol and the name, it goes to the Shinde camp. And this was basically issue was going on regarding the name and the symbol of a political party. So Election Commission of India on Friday, it allotted the name Shiv Sena and the party's bow and arrow symbol to the Eknath Shinde faction, who's basically in the power right now, and obviously he is the chief minister of Maharashtra. And the commission said that it had based its decision on a test on majority basis, as a group of MLAs supporting the Shinde faction, they had got nearly 76% of the total votes polled by the 55 winning Shiv Sena candidates. So on this basis, they have given the name and the symbol of the party to the current political party which is in power in the Maharashtra. So regarding the election of mayor in Delhi, Supreme Court rules out voting by the nominated members. So it says that nominated members, they are not going to have the voting powers. And this is a legal victory of Aam Aadmi Party and the Supreme Court. It ordered the LG of Delhi to notify the first meeting of the Municipal Corporation of Delhi to elect a mayor within 24 hours. So 24 hours of time period has been given by the Supreme Court to elect a mayor, and held that the nominated members, they cannot vote in this election to select the mayor of Delhi. So here we have all the political issues. Again, will not be taking them up. So coming to the editorial page, basically this article is talking about social security in the story of the two budgets. So this year, in the union budget, we saw severe cuts in various social security and the welfare schemes, such as the food security and the MGNREGA schemes. So they have undermined the already precarious lives of various, basically large number of poor people in India. And so basically in this year's budget, we saw that we came to see subsidy rationalization, and apart from that we have seen an increase in the capital expenditure by the government. So apart from that, so this article is basically seeing that the budget has ignored the welfare of the poor people and the downtrodden section by reducing the allotment for social security and the welfare schemes. And it is important to ensure minimum conditions and the dignity of such people. So this is like talking about the state budget of Rajasthan and all those things. So for the vulnerable working people, senior citizens, and the disabled, rights based entitlements provide a measure of dignified living, which should be the objective of any democracy, regardless of the immediate electoral implications. And ultimately, it is our compassion and commitment to meet the basic needs of our most marginalized people that will gauge us as a society and as a nation. So here we can say that if budget allocation has been reduced, so that does not, we can like completely come to the conclusion that the welfare of the poor people or the people basically who need the government support is being ignored. Government might be coming up with some other schemes or might be having a different plan of action. So only on this basis, only on the one factor, we cannot come to this conclusion in entirety. And apart from that, here again, it is talking about MGNREGA and basically talking about what reforms are needed. So the government's, the suggestions that have been provided by the government regarding the reforms in the MGNREGA, they seem misguided. And so let's take a look at what suggestions have been provided by the government on this. So key to success of any welfare program is the conviction in its implementation. Okay, if you have if you have nicely and scientifically after proper assessment, you have devised a plan or a welfare scheme, but if that is not effectively and properly implemented as it should have been, so obviously there would be like no benefit out of the, after like doing so much of research behind that scheme. So if its implementation is very very important. And in the 17 years since the MGNREGA it has been implemented, studies they have asserted its net positive impact in the rural areas. So we are definitely seeing that MGNREGA scheme has provided us with the net positive impact, specifically in the rural areas, from reducing the penury through providing off-season employment. So whenever there is like, obviously agriculture does not provide you 365 days of employment. So during off season, another option for the agricultural laborers is to get employment through MGNREGA scheme. So here it helps in providing the off season employment and thereby improving the household consumption. So that is also there, that consumption is not impacted. And apart from that, it is also acting as the insurance during the monsoon deficient season also, whenever there is not good monsoon. So obviously the incomes, they are not impacted, because again the people, they have this alternative of getting 100 days of guaranteed employment under the MGNREGA scheme. And besides allowing for the greater food security through increased productivity held by the works generated, and the scheme continues to be a robust welfare tool. So this was even clearer during the pandemic time also. We saw that when there was reverse migration, so the demand for work under the MGNREGA, it rose massively, and we saw that thousands of workers, migrant workers who left the urban areas due to the lockdowns, they took work under the MGNREGA in rural areas, where demand for the menial but arduous work, it peaked during that time period. And but we see that the scheme has now transcended into creating more useful assets beyond roads and irrigation canals, and requiring broad basing and better implementation. So one reform or one step in when we talk about reforming the scheme is going beyond roads and irrigation. So looking at something, when we are talking about transition towards green energy, so that component can be included here. And other things can also be included, not just, depending upon construction of roads and irrigation canals, because obviously that has certain kind of limit. You can't just keep going on building roads and irrigation. So including the green energy component, that can be one of the things. And apart from that, so the scheme has also graduated from a case of lukewarm acceptance of its need because of its popular impact to treating it as a fiscal burden. So the scheme now, it is like, we can say, there's a notion that it is treated more like a fiscal burden. However, we are seeing that we have just talked about the positive impacts that the scheme has had. And apart from that, this year in the union budget, we saw that the allocation has been drastically reduced for MGNREGA. So this is also like depressed the demand basically, because of again lower allocation, and there is delay in the wage payments to the workers who are enrolled on this scheme. We also see that the Aadhaar based payments, they have neither reduced the corruption nor reduced the wage payment delays, while creating hurdles for the officials and the workers during its implementation. So still there persists corruption, and obviously the funds that are allocated, even they are like manipulated and used somewhere else. So apart from that, we know that it is a demand driven program, and it is salient especially in the poorer states, and it is incumbent upon the center to ensure its robust funding instead of putting the onus on the individual states to do so. And the government must change its approach towards the engineering by recognizing its potential in catering to the poor's right to work. That is there. And so here, when we talk about, because majorly because of the Adani issue, we saw that parliament sessions, they were disrupted. So it is regarding this, that parliament should remain a forum for free debate and discussion. So obviously the governance of the country, the functioning of the democracy should not be impacted like this. And if opposition have like some concerns, then obviously they need to voice that thing, and they should allow the parliament to function as per the rules. So that is there. Apart from that, so India and Japan are going to have a joint army exercise. Basically, that will be there in Shiga, and the name is Dharma Guardian. So this can come up in PT. Such questions do come up. So here you need to remember the name. That is Dharma Guardian is a bilateral army exercise between India and Japan. So we are having G20 meetings at different places across India. So that is also going to boost tourism there. And we are having them at important places which are there in India. So we are also promoting them in a way. So the focus remains on the key G20 meetings. So regarding Article 370, basically it was scrapped in 2019. So the Chief Justice of India pledges to take call on listing of the pleas regarding Article 370. So the case has been pending in the Supreme Court for over 2 years, and it has not come up after a 5-judge bench refused to refer the petitions to a larger bench in March 2020. So the CJI, he will take a call about listing the petitions challenging the abrogation of provisions under Article 370 of the Constitution. And when this article was abrogated, we know that the state of Jammu and Kashmir was divided into two union territories. One was Jammu and Kashmir, and another Ladakh was carved out of as a separate union territory without a legislature. But Jammu and Kashmir had a legislature. So it says that a move that had deprived Jammu and Kashmir of its special privileges and led to the bifurcation of the state in 2019. And apart from that, so right now, I don't think so. There are other important details over here for us to be discussed. So we'll see when Supreme Court takes up this issue and what would be its judgment regarding this. Talking about wildlife, that is pangolins, and that's how they look. You can see in this picture. So over 1,000 pangolins, they have been poached and trafficked in India in the past 5 years. So trafficking of pangolins. So here, what is important for us is you need to know about traffic. And apart from that, even CITES convention become important. And under the Wildlife Protection Act, basically they are there under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act. So Schedule 1 is which is like it gives the highest protection. So that could result even in a jail term for those hunting the animals which are listed in Schedule 1. So India is home to two species, the Indian pangolin, which is found across the subcontinent, and we have the Chinese pangolin, which is found across a larger area in South Asia. And Bihar, West Bengal, and Assam, they see the presence of both these species. And both of them are listed there in Schedule 1 under the Wildlife Protection Act. And apart from that, so basically we are celebrating the World Pangolin Day, which is observed on 18th of February. And a not-for-profit organization working on the international trade of these animals and plants, they have brought out a fact sheet regarding the trafficking of the pangolins. And apart from that, so that is the important information that we have regarding this thing. So India reports a significant number of pangolin trafficking incidents reflected by seizures across the country, and they are poached mainly for international markets in China and Southeast Asia for their scales. So it is believed that they are used as an ingredient in traditional medicine. So for that, they are majorly trafficked. So you can find out about their IUCN status. So I couldn't spot that here in this article. So you can find out that. And this picture is there of the Indian pangolin at the Kana Reserve in Madhya Pradesh. And two species of pangolins they are found in India. So one is Chinese and one is the Indian pangolin. So the Ministry of Home Affairs designates two outfits as the terrorist organization. So here the first thing that should come to your mind would it should be which law is used here. So it is the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act of 1967, which has been used. And here Khalistan Tiger Force and the Jammu and Kashmir Ghaznavi Forest has been listed as or they've been designated as the terrorist organizations under this act. Coming to the world page. So North Korea threatens unprecedented response to South and US army drill. So South Korea's and USA is having an army drill together, and North Korea is threatened to basically take certain action against that. And we've been like always like we see news regarding North Korea and their tests that they have regarding their weapons, and that is there. So UAE's new interfaith center is to host the country's first synagogue, and United Arab Emirates, it has opened a center housing a mosque, church, and the country's first official synagogue, the Abrahamic Family House, with the aim of promoting interfaith coexistence in the Muslim nation. And the oil-rich Gulf Federation, which normalized relations with Israel, is home to a small Jewish community also. So Russia is going to test missile and naval drills with China. So again, this is a news which should highly basically concern us. And Russia, China, and South Africa, they are set to begin the naval drills off South Africa's Indian Ocean coast, and they'll be demonstrating their close ties amid the Russia's invasion in Ukraine and Chinese relationship with the West. So this exercise is going to be there for 10 days, and it has been named MOSI the 2, and it will coincide with the first anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine on 24th of February. And on the other hand, Ukraine's president, he seeks a speedy supply of arms from the allies, because we know that this war has been turned much more offensive by Russia, because again the first year anniversary is approaching. And at the Munich Security Conference, the Ukraine leader says there is no alternative to his country securing victory against Russia, and he voted to push for Kyiv joining the European Union and NATO. So he wished that Ukraine should join European Union and also NATO. So global slowdown path is still uncertain, and India to decouple from that. So domestic consumption and investment to benefit from the stronger prospects for the agriculture sector, strengthening the consumer confidence and strong credit growth. So officials they write in the RBI bulletin. So in India, we are not expecting any kind of slowdown. Given we have like strong prospects for the agricultural sector, we are seeing strong credit demand also, and there is a strengthening consumer confidence, but still inflation is a concern for us. And talking about supply responses, the cost conditions, they are poised to improve. So this is coming from RBI. Then budget's emphasis on capital expenditure, again, that is going to crowd in the private investment and bolster the job creation and the domestic demand. And decoupling to be driven by the budget, raising 2023 to 27 the growth prospects and long-term potential. So our macroeconomic fundamentals, they are strong. So India is not going to witness any kind of slowdown. And we have talked about the factors which, on the basis of which we can say this thing. Then RBI issues draft norms for the borrowing and lending of government securities. So government securities are considered to be much more safer investment options because they are issued by the government of India. So there are guidelines, so you can have a look at those guidelines also. So India is setting up a $4 billion fund to aid the corporate debt market. And this is to provide liquidity to its corporate debt market during the bouts of stress to help stem panic selling and ease the redemption pressures. Now we'll move on to another newspaper. Okay, let's discuss first the important things from Mint. So here we will be discussing why the settlement in rupee is off to a tentative start. So regarding the watchdog accounts, and basically we were seeing this in relation with Russia, that we were trying to have a trade with Russia in Indian rupee. So some 20 banks, they have opened their special watchdog accounts. So watchdog accounts are important when you want to transact with a country in Indian rupee to settle the foreign trade in rupees. And however, the mechanism is yet to take off with the exporters, flagging certain issues. So Russian buyers, they meanwhile are offering payments to Indian exporters in yuan and dirham, because Russia is also seeing that the Indian rupee is being piling up in Russia. So how they're going to use that? So that is one question. So why was this mechanism needed? So because of the Russia-Ukraine war and the Western sanctions that were imposed on Russia, Reserve Bank of India, it launched the rupee settlement mechanism in July to buy the cheap Russian oil and cut its dependence on the foreign currencies, especially the US dollar, and reduce India's vulnerability to external shocks. So this was one of the reasons why we shifted to Indian rupee. So which banks they have opened? So this is like HDFC banks, and we have the State Bank of India, Yes Bank, IDBI Bank, Punjab National Bank, Axis Bank. So all these banks, they have opened up watchdog accounts. So how does rupee trade works? So Indian importers, they can make the payment in Indian rupee, which is credited to the watchdog account of the correspondent bank of the partner country against the invoices for the supply of goods or services from the overseas supplier. So it is like a very simple transactional process. And similarly, Indian exporters, they are paid in Indian rupee into the special watchdog accounts of the corresponding banks of the partner country. So that's how transactions are carried out in Indian rupee. So are the private banks, they're resisting this mechanism? So while we see that Russia and China trade, they has hit record highs, India's exports to Russia, they are yet to return to pre-war levels. So even we have like not achieved those pre-war levels with the Russia when it comes to India's exports to Russia. So one reason is again the absence of a smooth payment mechanism. And exporters, they say some Indian private banks, they are reluctant to trade with Russia and Iran, fearing the Western sanctions. So these concerns are also there. And economists say that while there's no regulatory risk for the private banks in dealing with Russia, because RBI is backing this rupee settlement mechanism, so there is like no kind of risk for the private banks if they want to indulge if they want to get indulged into all these things. So there could be delays in the payment and prolonged credit cycle. So the we can say that one of the factors why private banks are not interested so much is because of lack of a smooth payment mechanism. So why is success here important for India? So again, it is going to like reduce our dependence upon the foreign currencies and reduce the risk because of that. And a successful rupee settlement mechanism could do the trick. So the economic survey said if the Indian rupee turnover rises to equal the share of the non-US, non-euro currencies in the global forex turnover of 4%, it could be regarded as an international currency. So if the usage that increases up till the turnover increases up till 4%, so then Indian rupee could be regarded as an international currency. So one prerequisite for an international currency is that it should be increasingly used for trade invoicing. So this is one of the prerequisite or one of the conditions that needs to be fulfilled for a currency to be declared as an international currency. And let's have a look at the quote of the day also. So this comes from our Union Finance Minister. She says that the priority is to keep the growth momentum as it is and also to make sure of further support measures for sustaining the growth and be conscious of the challenges which are extraneous to India. So the external factors, the external challenges that we are facing, focusing upon the long-term growth. And as we saw that the Union budget also emphasized much upon the capital expenditure. Now let's move on to the next newspaper. So let's take up Financial Express now. So Supreme Court is calling for transparency in the whole issue regarding the Adani row and how it would be dealt. So it firstly calls for there should be proper transparency in this whole investigation process. So we will form a committee, so there will be a sense of confidence in the court also. So it is very important that even the investors' confidence and also people are also like having an eye on this whole issue. So transparency and accountability is very important when it comes to the whole investigation of this thing. So Google fires over 450 employees in India. So this exercise continues, and we are seeing that more and more people are being laid off by the private IT companies specifically. So artificial intelligence, definitely it has potential in future, and it has a potential to add almost about $1 trillion to the Indian economy in 2035. So finance minister says that will allot more funds for the rural job scheme if it is needed. So this is majorly for the MG Narega, and we keep giving more for it as the demand develops. So if there is going to be more demand, so more fund would be allocated, and we also ensure that it gets spent. So these are very clear strategies through which we go. So that is there. And RBI says that India can achieve 7% GDP growth next fiscal year and fiscal consolidation to add 10 basis points to the potential growth. So fiscal consolidation basically means you need to reduce your fiscal deficit and ensure that growth is also not impacted. So what does the RBI bulletin says, although we have had a look at this thing in the Hindu newspaper. So again, we'll like go through what else has been written over here. So the savings on taxes from the rejig of the exemption-free income tax regime, it will boost the spending by households on the consumption, leading to a 15 basis points boost to the growth. So because of the new tax regime, it is expected that the households' consumption demand would be increasing. So even that is going to contribute around 15 basis points. So that is 0.15 percentage of the GDP would be increased because of the new tax regime. And secondly, the union budget, the central bank said that it will expand the productive capacity of the economy by the thrust on the capital expenditure, new technologies, and by seizing the demographic dividend. So these are key terms which are very important, and obviously these should be reflected in the answers as well. Thirdly is the fiscal consolidation process will likely accelerate, aided by increase in the potential growth. So these are important things coming from RBI. So Prime Minister is saying that our government reimagined, reinvented every element of governance. So since we have minimum government and maximum governance, and when the country gave us the opportunity to serve, our first step was to reimagine things. So Prime Minister says that his government in the last 9 years has transformed the country from fragile five to anti-fragile by reimagining and reinventing every element of governance. So India was there in the category of fragile five countries. So you can find out more about this thing. And apart from that, he highlighted the various achievements of his government in several sectors like road construction, expansion of metro trains network, laying the railway lines and increasing the number of airports. Also, he asked the global investors to participate in India's growth story, saying that in return, the country guarantees them returns. So, Food Corporation of India goes ahead with the open market sale of wheat so as to reduce the prices of wheat and increase its supply. So, government lowers the wheat reserve price. So, reserve prices of wheat of fair and average quality announced is marginally higher than the MSP. And the second e-auction was held recently, so we've had a look at that. So the reduction in the reserve price will help in reducing the market price of wheat and wheat products for the consumers. So this is again the second step that government can take in ensuring the reduction in inflation, the wheat prices. So inflation, the wheat prices rose by a sharp 25% on year in January, pushing up the retail food inflation to almost 6% from the previous month. So we are seeing cereal inflation in India. We are also celebrating the Adi Mahotsav in New Delhi. And coming to the editorial page now. The power of truth. So while darkness and denialism hide very much, they erase nothing. So they can't erase the past and they shouldn't. Only with truth comes healing and justice and repair and another step forward. So, talking about the voice of the global south, and India has a very important role to play in this. So, in forwarding the agenda of the global south, India will be supported by the past and the future presidencies of the grouping Indonesia and Brazil. So, again, it is important for you to firstly understand what do we actually mean by global south. So, the countries who are firstly developing in nature and which lies below the equator, but India is still a part of that. So many regions, especially the African nations, they have limited representation in the global fora. So this is also one of the pending reforms of United Nations. And India is committed to proposing an upgrade of the African Union from a permanent observer to a full-fledged member of the G20. Apart from that, some important actionables, it could be sharing the insights from the Indian policy reforms like the national logistics policy, the creation of open network for digital commerce. Secondly, the Startup 20 engagement group is a new addition to the G20 engagement groups proposed under India's presidency. Thirdly, the G20 presidency presents India with a chance to emerge as a crusader of regulatory reforms by contributing towards the global regulatory framework. Fourthly, India needs to leverage its presidency to lead discussions detailing the insights from and the scope of the Indian global efforts like the Green Grids initiatives under the One Sun, One World, One Grid initiative that is creating a global solar energy grid and proposing initiatives and the policy incentives on the use of the clean energy and other goals. Lastly, G20 must provide political support and commitment to active dialogue on how to reduce the trade turbulence during crisis and suggest regulations that maintain stability in times of critical necessity. So we have already talked about this thing that although our trade deficit has narrowed down, our current account deficit has narrowed down, but the export contraction is a concern and exporters must not lose markets. They can't win back. So again, but we are also seeing that our imports are also declining. So India's exports to China, Japan, and the rest of Asia are under pressure as seen in the data up to December. So in one of the editorial articles, we also discussed that in order to ensure that exporters, they are not impacted much. So the entire South Asia and Southeast Asia, they must collaborate and come together in order to boost trade. So here ASEAN is going to have an important role. So that can be one of the options, one of the safer options for the Indian exports, and also the exports of the entire South Asia and Southeast Asia also. So we saw the sharpest weekly drop in reserves, our forex reserves, since April. And this was triggered by over $7 billion fall in the foreign currency assets. So value of gold reserves in the dollar terms, that also fell. The SDRs also fell. And our reserves were down by $63 billion year on year basis. So the reserves, they were impacted mainly because of the movement in the US dollar and intervention of RBI to restrict the volatility in the currency market through the sale or purchase of the forward contracts. So here also the explainer section is again regarding the wheat price. So what are the reasons behind increase in the wheat prices? A year ago, we saw that the center was bullish about a bumper wheat output, achieving the record procurement and around 10 million tons of exports in the current fiscal, sensing that the global opportunity arising out of the Russia-Ukraine war conflict that India has, and we would be leveraging this. So the scenario, it has now sharply changed with retail inflation in wheat at 25% this January. So situation has completely turned upside down, and we are facing cereal inflation specifically when we talk about the wheat prices. So when we talk about the wheat harvest, basically the total production that we are having due to lower production and higher global demand, FCS procurement in 2022-23 market season, it even that fell. So sensing the supply constraints, the center banned the exports, the wheat exports also in May 2022, except to meet the food security needs of other countries. So global wheat prices, they also rose sharply because of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and because both these countries, Russia and Ukraine, they play an important role in the trade of this grain. And sensing an opportunity for the export, so the center announced that 10 million ton of wheat will be exported in 2022-23. But while a record output was expected, but the standing crop, it suffered because of excessive rain in the middle of March. So all of this triggered this whole inflation issue regarding wheat because of lower production, and demand has been increasing. And the second factor is again the Russia-Ukraine war, because of which the supply of wheat has been globally impacted. So these two factors, we can say, are the major reasons why the wheat prices are increasing, and the inflation is at 25%. So for us, it was just this, that what are the factors which are influencing these two things? So basically, there are two factors. So what is the government doing to bring down the wheat prices? So as we just talked about, it has reduced the reserve prices. And secondly, the FCI, it has been providing, basically it is indulging into open market sale of the wheat buffer stock that it has, so that the prices come down at least in the domestic market. And thirdly, the government has also banned the wheat exports. So lastly, we'll be taking up the Indian Express now. So Global Investor Summit 2023 from March 3rd to 4th in Visakhapatnam in Arunachal Pradesh. So when we talk about the achievements of Andhra Pradesh, it is ranked number one in ease of doing business. It recorded a double-digit growth of around 11.5% GSDP growth rate. and which is the highest in the country as per the numbers released so far. And there is robust maritime infrastructure, there is conducive business environment. There, like, it has been awarded with awards like Leeds, which is there for the logistics sector, then Inertia Award for the energy sector, and for the port-led infrastructure projects also. And talking about the strength of the state of Andhra Pradesh, it has land bank of 48,000 acres, treasure houses, then abundant water supplies there, uninterrupted power supply, skilled workforce. There are 6 airports, there are 10 seaports. So it is basically, we are like, we can understand that they have a modern infrastructure, which is very important when it comes to ease of doing business. So we've already taken up all these things which are there on the main page that we have discussed in the Hindu newspaper. So I think we should directly jump onto the editorial page. Okay, so here on the explained page, so comments by billionaire George Soros on Adani, India, and Prime Minister Modi that have angered the BJP. So this article is talking about who is this personality, and he's a Holocaust survivor who has been convicted of insider trading. So for us, I hope you must be knowing about what is insider trading, because I've already taken up this thing in the previous videos, and is a mega democratic party donor also. So I think it is not that too important for us. Then this is about chatbots. They are insentient, but here's why it seems that they are. And this is over the name and symbol of a political party and the recent decision by the Supreme Court. So Supreme Court basically gave that the of the name and the political symbol of the Shiv Sena party to the current political personalities who are there in power. So here, what can be important for us is the Supreme Court judgments, and we have different articles and schedules of the constitutions mentioned. So okay, let's scan through this article first. So a 5-judge constitution bench, which was headed by the Chief Justice of India, it basically heard a batch of petitions related to the political fallout in Maharashtra due to the split in the Sena between the groups owing to the allegiance to Chief Minister Eknath Shinde. So he is right now the present Chief Minister of Maharashtra, and his predecessor Uddhav Thackeray. So in the Nabam Rabia case, the Supreme Court had ruled that it would be constitutionally impermissible for a Speaker of the House to adjudicate upon the disqualification petitions under the anti-defection law as per the 10th schedule of the Constitution, while a motion or resolution for his or her own removal from the office of Speaker is pending. So this is one important judgment for us. And in a matter related to the same dispute, the Election Commission of India recognized the Shinde faction as the original Shiv Sena and allotted the party's well-known bow and arrow symbol to it. And ECI, now the Election Commission of India, it has frozen that symbol in October last year, and it had temporarily allotted flaming torch to the Thackeray faction and 2 swords shield to the Shinde faction, because there was a dispute regarding the symbol and the name of Shiv Sena political party. And so here, this portion is talking about the different petitions that were filed by the 2 factions. So before this, the Constitution Bench, and so the former Chief Justice of India, he framed 10 issues for the consideration of the Constitution Bench regarding this whole issue, which was including whether the notice for the removal of the Speaker restricted him or her from continuing with the disqualification proceedings under the 10th schedule of the Constitution as held in Nabam Rabia. And the Constitution Bench was also asked to consider a situation in which the Speaker disqualifies the members from the date of the complaint and decide on the status of the proceedings that took place during the pendency. Then, so what now? The five-judge bench of the Constitution noted that whether the principle in the Nabam Rabia case it has an impact upon the facts in the present case needed deliberation, and the issue of whether the reference of the decision in Nabam Rabia it is warranted would be determined together with merits of the case. So we must look at the overall layers of the matter. We may take a call after we hear the arguments on the merit as well. We're not going into the merits only for the purpose of reference, but we are going to hear the overall matter. Okay, so nothing much important from us, or except one Supreme Court judgment, which is the Nabam Rapia case. And Special Marriage Act and how it differs from the religious codes of marriage. So, for several interfaith couples, including actress Swara Bhaskar and her husband, they had the choice to marry either under a secular personal law, is through the Special Marriage Act of 1954. Announcing her wedding, she tweeted, she gave tweeted the three cheers for the Special Marriage Act despite notice period, etc. At least it exists and gives love a chance. So the right to love, the right to choose your life partner, the right to marry, the right to agency should not be a privilege. So what actually is the Special Marriage Act? So it was passed by Parliament in 1954. It governs a civil marriage in which the state, basically rather than religion, sanctions the marriage. Okay, so here the state sanctions the marriage. So this is number one, which is important for us. Issues of personal law, such as marriage, divorce, adoption, they are governed by the religious laws that are codified. So these laws, such as the Muslim Marriage Act, we have the Hindu Marriage Act, they require either of the two spouses to convert to the religion of the other before marriage, but this is not required under the case of Special Marriage Act. So the conversion to another religion is not important here. And the Special Marriage Act enables marriage between interfaith or intercaste couples without either of them having to give up their religious identity or converting. So this is number two thing, which is important for us. So who can get married under this Special Marriage Act? So the applicability of the act, it extends to people of all faith, including Hindus, Muslims, Sikh, Christian, Jains, and Buddhists across India. Some customary restrictions, such as parties not being within degrees of a prohibited relationship, still apply to couples under this act. And in 1952, when the bill was proposed, the requirement of monogamy was considered radical. So, Section 4 of this act requires that at the time of marriage, neither party has a spouse living or is incapable of giving a valid consent to it in consequence of unsoundness of mind. And if you're once married as per the secular law, any member of an undivided family who professes the Hindu, Buddhist, Sikh, or Jain religions shall be deemed to effect his severance from such family. So this would affect the inheritance rights of the persons choosing to marry under the Special Marriage Act. Talking about the procedure for a civil marriage, so Section 5 of the Act, it says that the parties are required to give notice in writing to a marriage officer of the district in which at least one of the parties has resided for at least 30 days immediately preceding the notice. Before the marriage is solemnized, the parties and three witnesses are required to sign a declaration form before the marriage officer. And once the declaration is accepted, the parties are given a certificate of marriage, conclusive evidence of the fact that a marriage under this act has been solemnized and that all formalities respecting the signatures of witnesses have been complied with. So that is the procedure for a civil marriage under the Special Marriage Act. So that's all what is important for us. So regarding artificial intelligence world, so learning in this world to be future ready, engineering students must learn to be more nimble, cultivate diverse ways of thinking and interacting. So intelligent machines are revealing glimpses of a future evidence long ago in science fiction as they steadily morph from a human assist systems to systems as human, and the currently indispensable face obsolescence. And the question in the minds of students entering the college is how to be future ready. So artificial intelligence is going to play an important role over here, and so basically it is saying that move across disciplines. So it is going to help in moving across different disciplines for the students, learn to add value to machine intelligence. So here automation becomes important. Next is learn to collaborate. So the next proficiency to develop is to able to work both alone as well as in group. Then it is remain human, and technology has an interesting way of transforming the people into automations without the victims being aware. So that is there. So making sure that one remains human is a critical trait that needs serious attention throughout. And obviously, that should not be misused, or it should not basically overpower the humans. So it is a foundation without which wrong choices may be made in life. So the future of society is not so much dependent on whether machines will become human like, or as on whether humans will become machines. So 11 days after the earthquake, more people are still being rescued, and they're still being like found alive under the rubble, and survivors fight battle against cold. So basically twin challenges they have to face. So again we are seeing one of the earthquakes. So no one is dead, no building has been damaged, and an earthquake it struck the city of Erzin, where basically it is there in Turkey. So we are still like seeing aftershocks after that massive earthquake that we witnessed in Turkey and Syria. So we've already seen this. South Africa, it is going to begin drills with China and Russia, and the West is alarmed over this. And the name of this exercise is mostly the two. Coming to the economy, let's see if we have anything new on this page. So Russian oil imports are going to touch record in January. So Russian oil imports they climbed to a record 1.4 million barrels per day in January, and which was basically up by 9% from December's level. So India has been like buying the cheaper and discounted Russian oil. So that's all for today. Thank you for joining in Sarkari. We have covered a lot of things today, and I hope you have understood them well. So you can go through the PDF. You'll be getting the link of the PDF file in the description box. And till then, do not forget to like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And please like this video and share it as much as possible. So thank you so much for joining us today.